Today, in our discussion of minority groups, we have with us two guests. One is Minister Malcolm X Shabazz, one of the top leaders of the Nation of Islam, or the so-called black Muslims. And we also have Mr. Herman Blake, one of the teaching assistants in the course. We will discuss today some of the goals and some of the strategies of the Nation of Islam. And I wonder if Mr. Blake might start it off by asking Mr. Shabazz a question.
Minister Malcolm, the thing that I thought might be good for starting it off is to talk about one of the most pervasive beliefs in the general society about the Nation of Islam, and that is that it is an organization dedicated to the use of violent means to attain its goals. The question I have is, how true is this, and why do you think it persists in society?
Well, the Muslims who have accepted the religion of Islam and follow the religious guidance of the Honorable El-Hajj Muhammad have never bombed any churches, have never murdered any little girls, as was done in Birmingham, have never lynched anybody, have never at any time been guilty of initiating any aggressive acts of violence during the entire 33 years or more that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has been teaching us. The charge of violence against us actually stems from the guilt complex that exists in the conscious and subconscious minds of most white people in this country. They know that they've been violent in their brutality against Negroes, and they feel that someday the Negro is going to wake up and try and do unto them as they have done do unto the whites as the whites have done unto us. We aren't a violent group. We are taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to obey the law, to respect everyone who respects us. We're taught to display courtesy, to be polite. But we're also taught that at any time, anyone in any way inflicts or seeks to inflict violence upon us, we are within our religious rights to retaliate in self-defense to the maximum degree of our ability. We never initiate any violence upon anyone, but if anyone attacks us, we reserve the right to defend ourselves. So to accuse us of being violent is like accusing a man who is being lynched, who is being hung on a tree, simply because he struggles vigorously against his lyncher. The victim is accused of violence, but the lyncher is never accused of violence. And I only point this out because the various racist groups that are set up in this country by whites and who have actually practiced violence against blacks for 400 years are never associated or identified or made synonymous with the term violence. But whites speak of Muslims almost synonymously with violence. Whenever Muslims are mentioned by them, violence is brought up, but it's not connected with any other group. This is a sort of a propaganda tactic, or what I would call psychological warfare, to in some way make the image of the Muslims in this country be a violent image rather than a religious image.
I'd like to ask a question in that regard. What's interesting is that members of the Nation of Islam have not used violence even when black Americans were attacked. How do you account for this? Does this in any way contradict some of the basic premises of your movement?
I don't know how you mean.
Well, you maintain, for example, that you will not, or that you should not use violence unless you are attacked by the white man. And I think we can note in the last several years, certainly, dozens and dozens and dozens of instances in which Negroes have been attacked, killed in some instances.
You mean in these
The
demonstrations?
demonstrations and the bombings, for example, recently in Birmingham where they killed 4 little Negro girls. And what interests me is the fact is that the Nation of Islam has not done anything to retaliate.
I think you should be happy.
But
that-
no,
I'm going
the
to-
important thing is, does your lack of action
No.
contradict any of your basic principles?
I'll explain it. You should be happy that Muslims who follow the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, number one, don't believe in any form of integration, and who believe that every mention of the word integration by whites, whether it be from the mouth of Kennedy on down to the mouth of the lowest, raggediest white liberal in the street who is beatnik-like involving himself in these integration efforts, if we believed in it, we would integrate, and we would fight anybody who got in our way or made any effort whatsoever to stop us from integrating. If we really believed that the law of the land, the Supreme Court, and other so-called judicial bodies were for real when they talked about integration, we would integrate. And knowing that the law was on our side, and any effort we made to demonstrate toward integration, why, we would know the law should be on our side, if it's the law of the land. If it is the law of the land, then the demonstrators are within the law, and the discriminators are against the law. But to show you the hypocrisy of the law, when Negroes demonstrate for integration, instead of arresting the discriminators, the law arrests the demonstrators. So this is a foolish move on the part of Negroes. And when you foolishly get yourself involved with an enemy, then whatever comes upon you, that's your business. As Muslims, we believe that separation is the best way and the only sensible way, not integration. And but on the other hand, when we see our people being brutalized by white bigots, white racists, we think that they are foolish to allow themselves to be beaten and brutalized and do nothing whatsoever to protect themselves. They are foolish. They should have the right to defend themselves against any attack made against them by anyone. If a dog is biting a black man, the black man should kill the dog. Whether the dog is a police dog, a hound dog, or any kind of dog. If a dog is sick on a black man, when that black man is doing nothing but trying to take advantage of what the government says is supposed to be his, then that black man should kill that dog, or any two-legged dog who sicks the dog on him.
Should other black men help that particular person who was attacked?
I think you'll find, sir, that there will come a time when black people wake up and become intellectually independent enough to think for themselves, as other humans are intellectually independent enough to think for themselves. Then the black man will think like a black man, and he will feel for other black people. And this new thinking and feeling will cause black people to stick together. And then at that point, you'll have a situation where when you attack one black man, you are attacking all black men. And this type of black thinking will cause all black people to stick together. And this type of thinking also will bring an end to the brutality inflicted upon black people by white people. And it is the only thing that will bring an end to it. No federal court, state court, or city court will bring an end to it. It's something that the black man has to bring an end to himself.
Minister Malcolm, let me, on the basis of your two remarks, ask a double-pronged question. One, is it then your assertion that the laws with respect to how Negroes are supposed to have equal opportunity and equal rights in this country are not meaningful or believed by whites? And secondly, what is your opinion and attitude toward the civil rights movement in general, and particularly the Reverend Martin Luther King and his philosophy of nonviolent direct action?
If the white people really passed meaningful laws it would not be necessary to pass any more laws. There are already enough laws on the law books to protect an American citizen. You only need additional laws when you're dealing with someone who is not regarded as an American citizen. But whites are so hypocritical. They don't want to admit that this black man is not a citizen. So they classify him as a second-class citizen to get around making him a real citizen. If he was a real citizen, you'd need no more laws. You'd need no civil rights legislation. Civil rights, when you have civil rights, you have citizenship. It's automatic. White people don't need laws to protect their citizenship because they're citizens. But they don't want to tell us we're not citizens. And at the same time, they don't want to pass laws that are meaningful enough to protect us as if we were citizens. And the Supreme Court desegregation decision is the best example I know. That's a law from the Supreme Court. 10 years have gone by. No desegregated schools. It hasn't been implemented beyond, I think, 9% in 10 years. So this just shows you the hypocrisy of the American white man. They talk out of both sides of their mouth. And for this reason, we who are Muslims, that is, who believe in the religion of Islam, who believe in God, we don't believe that black people will ever get any laws, get any problem with laws being passed or new persons being put in office, white liberals being put in office. There is nothing that the white man will ever do to bring about true, sincere citizenship or civil rights recognition for black people in this country. Nothing will they ever do. They will always talk it, but they won't practice it. And with the Supreme Court, if the NAACP can tell me that they want a desegregation decision for me 10 years ago, but yet the schools haven't been desegregated, as I say, this is a victory with no victory. It's a victory that you can talk about, but it's a victory you can't show me. So if you represent the NAACP and you are telling me about this great victory you won for me, when I look at you, I have to conclude that either you have been duped yourself or else you are trying to dupe me. And in most instances where the civil rights struggle is involved, there is no civil rights leader can point to me one concrete gain, practical gain, that black people have made in the civil rights field in this country, not only during the past 10 years, but during the past 100 years.
Now, the other part was with respect to Mr. King and the nonviolent direct action.
Well, I will let Jimmy Baldwin and John Killens and Lou Lomax, the writers, answer that. Speaking right after this church was bombed in Birmingham, Christian church was bombed in Birmingham by Christians too, mind you, and these 4 little girls were murdered. John Killens and James Baldwin and Lomax and the Negro writers and actors had a meeting at the town hall in New York. And Killen pointed out, concerning these murders of these little girls, said the killings had raised doubts about the intelligence of the nonviolence in the civil rights struggle. He went on to declare that he could no longer be asked to love those who persecuted and killed Negroes. He also, and the writer, Mr. Handler, who's describing this, said that Killens, it was not clear concerning Killens' remarks to his audience that he was breaking with it was clear rather to his audience that he was breaking with the doctrine of the Reverend Martin Luther King's philosophy that as Christians, Negroes should love their fellow man in a truly religious sense. Now, James Baldwin, speaking on that same platform, said, and I was present during this entire affair, asserted that the American people shared a collective guilt for the persecution of Negroes, much as Germans did because of their silence during the Nazi persecution. He denounced President Kennedy for what he termed Kennedy's lack of passion in the civil rights struggle. Mr. Baldwin said that there could no longer be a Republican Party for the Negro people as long as it listed a Barry Goldwater, nor a Democratic Party for the Negro people with a Senator Eastland on its roster. He asserted that the federal government acted swiftly and energetically, that unless the federal government acted swiftly and energetically, future slaughter would make Birmingham look like a dress rehearsal. What do I think about King's attitude? King's right-hand man, Wyatt Walker, at King's Convention, according to the New York Times on September the 26th, said, quote, we have been duped, meaning these persons involved in the civil rights struggle, of which King is the symbolic leader. His right-hand man says, and I quote, we have been duped or have duped ourselves into believing that the chains have been broken, when in truth we have only been chained more securely. Half freedom has in many instances been worse than no freedom at all. Why? Don't ask me what I think about their struggle. I can tell you what they think about their struggle. And they are pointing out that it is becoming more difficult every day for the civil rights leaders to keep the masses of black people nonviolent and long-suffering and patient and keep them from becoming disenchanted. I hope that answers your question.
Well, now there's a new party which has started on the East Coast called the Freedom Now Party, an all-black organization. Would you comment upon this and also upon the possibility that the Nation of Islam might begin to turn some of its attention to the political arena in view of the fact that it is in the political arena that Negroes have not been able to in any way get justice, as has been pointed out in your previous statement?
I'm not familiar with the Freedom Now Party. I'm not too familiar with politics, period, only that in the sense that white politicians have usually been very hypocritical where the so-called Negroes are concerned. So I'm a bit disenchanted with politicians and politics. The Honorable El-Hajj Muhammad is a religious man, and his teaching is religious and his solutions are religious. The Freedom Now Party, from what I understand, is headed by a lawyer named Conrad Lynn. I know him. He probably means well. Before passing an opinion on what it is he's trying to do, I would like to analyze it and see who's subsidizing him, see who his friends are, especially who his white friends are. And after a careful analysis, if I could conclude that there was no white support, I would be inclined to have confidence in it. But if I saw him leaning too heavily upon his white liberal friends for support, then I'd be suspicious of that too. The Muslims, in my opinion, represent an all-black party. And the Honorable El-Hajj Muhammad pointed out at before 10,000 in Philadelphia on September the 29th at a rally that we were having, that in 1964 the black people should band together and do something about selecting and electing representatives, black representatives, politically, who have the rights and the best interests of the black people at heart, and that we should also unite together and sweep out of office all of the black political puppets who are used by the white power structure to continue white supremacy in our communities.
In that regard, would you include Congressman Dawson, for example, from Chicago, and some of the people who represent him on the Chicago City Council?
In which regard?
In the area of acting as a puppet.
I don't know what Mr. Muhammad's opinion is of Congressman Dawson. They both live right there in the city of Chicago together. I don't know what his opinion is of Congressman Dawson. I'm suspicious of any Negro, be he politician, be he clergyman, or civic leader who is constantly patted on the back by whites. I have a tendency to lead toward the Negro politician who is constantly condemned by the white power structure. This is my thought pattern. I'm giving you an insight of it.
You, though, mentioned Mr. Lynn and saying you'd like to know who his white friends are. Now, I'm wondering if you didn't make a contradictory statement in Muslim terms by using white and friend in the same phrase. That is
I
to
use
say,
friend in quotes.
I see. In other words, if a black man cannot have a white man as a friend.
He may have a white man who's friendly, but being friendly and being a friend, I think, are two different things. I think there are many whites who act friendly toward Negroes. A fox acts friendly toward the lamb. And usually the fox is the one who ends up with the lamb chop on his plate. The wolf doesn't act friendly, and therefore the wolf has more difficulty in getting the lamb chop in his plate.
I'd like to point out, though, that...
And I say that because it is usually if you study the structure of the Negro community economically, politically, civically, psychologically, and otherwise. It's controlled by the white liberal, who usually poses as the friend of the Negro, who actually differs from the white conservative in the same way that the fox differs from the wolf. Their appetite is the same. Their motives are the same. It's only their mannerisms and methods that differ.
I would agree that no doubt there have been a large number of whites who have posed as liberals and as friends of the Negro and who have time and again betrayed the Negro. On the other hand, I think one could point to a large number of whites who have struggled for civil rights, for equality, and have got little or nothing out of it, other than quite a few bruises.
Give me an example.
Well, the large number of white students who have gone into the South, for example, working for SNCC and other organizations.
Not working for SNCC or other organizations, but working for the white political machines who benefit by the voting efforts of Negroes.
Okay, I'll be more specific. I would cite Herbert Hill, for example, as a kind of person who has championed Negro job rights, for example, in New York City and elsewhere. He has fought the political machine.
First time I met Herbert Hill personally was when they were picketing to stop the working on the Harlem Hospital in Harlem. Negroes for 10 years had to fight the city to get an annex built on the Harlem Hospital. Because in Harlem we need a hospital more so than anything else. Our people are sick, plus we do a lot of cutting and shooting of each other, though we profess to be nonviolent. And Herbert Hill brought his forces out and stopped the working on that site. This is the first time I ever saw him. Then when work was brought to a halt on a hospital in Harlem, the same Negroes tried to stop the work at the downstate medical center in Brooklyn, which is predominantly white. They were out there for 3 months during the summer, couldn't stop anything. And I never saw Herbert Hill out there one time. Now, whenever it takes a stoppage of something that's going to affect the white man, you find the white liberal absent. But when it involves something that primarily will affect the best interests of black people and black people only, then that white liberal is present. Herbert Hill is the labor secretary for the NAACP. And if he was interested in black people, he would prepare a black man with the type of knowledge and understanding of the labor troubles involving black people that would enable a black man to sit in the same position as Secretary of Labor or Labor Secretary in the NAACP. I'm suspicious of whites who join Negroes and always have to be in the lead, who always have to be the head, who always have to be at the top in Negro organizations. Those whites who really have the interest of blacks at heart, let them give some advice to some Negroes and stand on the sideline. But don't join the organization and then get at the head of it and say they're the friend of Negroes.
Well, I would defend his sincerity and his commitment. And more than that, I would say that just because a person is a Negro or a black American does not mean that he's going to struggle for Negro rights or for jobs for Negroes or anything else. I think that today you could point to a large number of Negro leaders who have consistently betrayed Negroes in a whole host of areas.
They aren't really Negro leaders. These are puppets that have been put in front of the Negro community by white liberals. These are parrots that have been put in front of the Negro community by white liberals. You can't name me a Negro leader who has been betrayed Negroes, who has not been endorsed, sanctioned, subsidized, and supported by the white liberals.
Minister Malcolm, I'd like to...
Well, I could cite one example would be Congressman Dawson, for example, in Chicago. In Chicago, a large number of liberals located in the Hyde Park district have consistently fought Dawson and his betrayals of the Negro, and they've also fought some of the people who represent Dawson on the Chicago City Council.
The only Negro I know who is constantly fought, only Negro politician that I know who is constantly fought by white liberals is Adam Clayton Powell. And they call him a racist because he speaks so bluntly on the race issue. But I'm not, as I said, not too familiar with Dawson and his work.
Let me return to the Nation of Islam per se, Minister, by raising a question which struck me as a result of reading some of Baldwin's work, namely The Fire Next Time. Baldwin pointed out that in Harlem for many years he had passed the street corners and the soapboxes and heard people speaking from these platforms who were known as black nationalists, and nobody was listening. And he said all of a sudden he realized that people were beginning to listen to the Muslim speakers on the street corners in Harlem. The message essentially was the same, but it was that now many people were listening to what this message was. And you pointed out that the Nation of Islam has been in the picture for about 33 years. What is it, in your judgment, that has caused this tremendous amount of support that the Nation of Islam has garnered in the Negro community in, say, the last 10 years?
When you put a seed in the soil, it remains beneath the soil until the season changes. And when the season changes, the seasonal change automatically brings about rather atmospheric conditions, bring about a seasonal change that makes that seed come up or crop grow in its appointed time. And all over this world today, God himself has brought about political changes, a political atmosphere, sociological, social atmosphere, economic atmosphere. These economic conditions, these political conditions and social conditions combine to bring about a situation that is making black people in America more receptive, their mind more fertile to the seed of truth that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has been planting for 30-some years. And this is springing up today and causing our people to see and understand now what they couldn't see and understand before.
What is the nature of this situation which is making black people more receptive?
Well, you take in the past, say, 15 years, how the nations have emerged, dark nations have emerged in Africa. Prior to 10 years ago, most Negroes identified Africa with a savage, jungle-like place. And whenever you mentioned the word African, in their mind's eye, they could see the image of someone running around with a spear, with no language, who'd say ugga bugga boo or bwana or something, and who'd be in a jungle running from lions or chasing lions. But then when, after the war, when the United Nations was set up in New York City, black people began to look at men like Tom Mboya. They began to look at men like Nkrumah. They began to see men like Lumumba. They began to see men like Nasser. They began to see these Belawa and Azikwe, who could exchange intellectually with whites on an international level in a political form and hold their own. This made the black people in this country realize that what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had been teaching all the time actually had substance. And they began to turn it over in their mind and see that what he was saying had more weight to it than what these other Negroes were saying. And they began to identify themselves with the black world and the black struggle more closely than they identified themselves with this so-called white world.
Let me ask you a question with respect to a statement which Essien Udom quotes as being on a bulletin board in the University of Islam in Chicago by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. According to Essien, Mr. Muhammad states, "Up, you mighty race. You can accomplish what you willed. Build your future on these foundations: freedom, justice, and equality." What is the definition of freedom, justice, and equality for the black man, and where and when is it to be attained?
Well, take equality first. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad doesn't teach us to associate equality with whites. Equality has nothing to do with whites. We don't want to be equal with the white man. He's not the criteria or yardstick by which equality is measured. He's not in a position to tell us we are equal. It's not his right. It's not his to do. Equality, we want equality. We had equality before the white man was created. We had equality before the white man came into existence. And we want equality whether the white man is on this earth or not. Equality means the opportunity to develop all of our dormant potential, all of our dormant capability. And in developing this dormant capability, the right and the ability to stand on this earth on some land of our own and bring about a civilization and a society in which we will be completely independent, complete freedom to take care of the needs, to take care of the wants and the likes and the dislikes of our people, to establish our own nation, our own society, our own heaven, our own future. This is what we mean by freedom, by equality. And justice means as you sow, so shall you reap. If you do wrong, you'll get wrong in return. And if you do right, you'll get right in return. When you're in your own nation, in your own land, you're in a position to get justice. But when you're in another man's country, in another man's land, under another man's flag, and under another man's government, and under another man's court system, you have to look to that other man for justice, and you'll never get it. And Negroes in this country probably are authorities on that.
Yeah. To what extent does this formulation approach that expounded by Zionists? They, for example, many Zionists maintain they could never expect justice in the Tsarist courts and the courts found in other countries in Eastern Europe and so on. And they decided that it would be wise to establish a separate state in Israel.
And all of the world powers got together, the white world powers, I should say, got together and helped all of these white Jews to establish a separate state in the heart of a dark-skinned people's territory. And if white people can get together and let other whites, help other whites to establish an independent nation right in the midst of dark-skinned people, and then we don't see where white people should be so much against the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's solution, not of setting up an independent dark nation in white people's property, but he's asking the opportunity to set up an independent nation on our own continent. Let us leave America and go back home among our own people on our own land and set up our own independent society. But all he says is that this government, which made us slaves, should supply the transportation for us to get back home and give us all of the machinery and the tools necessary for us to till the soil and establish our own agricultural system to feed and clothe our people, our own economy, and in some way become an independent people among our own people on our own continent. This is intelligent. And Zionists should never criticize us.
You say then that the United States is not the black man's country.
Definitely
American
not.
laws
No,
are
no.
not black man's laws.
No. So,
American laws are not the black man's laws.
well, the laws here in America were made by white people for the benefit of white people. The Constitution was written by whites for the benefit of whites. It was never written for the benefit of blacks. And when you read the Constitution, I think in Article 1, Section 2, or Section 1, Article 1, one of the two, and it's in the Constitution, it says that it classifies black people as 3/5 of a man. 3/5 of a man, subhuman, less than a human being. It relegates us to the level of cattle, hogs, chickens, cows, a commodity that could be bought and sold at the will of the master. No, it was written by whites for the benefit of whites and to the detriment of blacks. And when a black man stands up talking about his constitutional rights, he's out of his mind.
Now, Minister Malcolm, in our textbook, which the students have read, supposedly, there is a statement, which is a quotation from Essien and essentially that from Lincoln, to the effect that the Nation of Islam does not have a great deal of support in the Negro community in this country by and large. And a recent national poll of American Negroes found that leaders and rank and file, according to their statistics, supported the Reverend Martin Luther King somewhere over 90%, whereas the support and favorable rating that they gave Minister Muhammad was less than 20%, and somewhere around 45% of them gave an unfavorable rating to Mr. Muhammad. What would your response be in terms of Baldwin's statement that this is a growing thing and the kinds of evidence that we have that there isn't much to it?
Well, that statement I just made concerning the Constitution is Article 1, Section 2 in the Constitution, where it classifies us as chattel. Baldwin did point out that Mr. Muhammad has the only grassroots support and is the only one whose whole following operates or functions on a mass vehicle. And I think Baldwin told Dr. Kenneth Clark that Martin Luther King is at the end of his rope. Now, concerning the poll taken by Newsweek magazine, I think you said that this was the leaders who said that, who went with King and against Mr. Muhammad around 90%. I just told you a little while ago, these leaders that they call leaders, this included Lena Horne, this included Dick Gregory, and this included comedians, comics, trumpet players, baseball players. Show me in the white community where a comedian is a white leader. Show me in the white community where a singer is a white leader, or a dancer or a trumpet player is a white leader. These aren't leaders. These are puppets and clowns that have been set up over the white community and over the black community by the white community and have been made celebrities and usually say exactly what they know that the white man wants to hear. And it is an honor, actually, that they endorsed Dr. Martin Luther King and were against the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. That's actually an honor. Now, when you say that they also, in this same Newsweek poll magazine, I think the pollster said that he went into the Negro community and asked about the Muslims. And many Negroes whom he asked said, well, I never heard of the Muslims. Who are they? You know,
this is the rank and file we're talking about.
Oh, yeah. Now, when they got down to the rank and file, this was the answers that they got. This is the equivalent to the situation in Kenya during the Mau Mau uprising, when many frightened whites in Kenya, Africa, would go among the Africans and ask them, what about the Mau Mau? And the African would say, I never heard of them. And the same white man who would ask the African this question and very naively believe what the African said, when he went to bed that night, he would lose his head. And usually the one who took his head was the same African who told him that afternoon he had never heard of the Mau Mau.
Except in the Newsweek poll, they used Negro interviewers.
You'll find that oftentimes Negroes are as much on guard around Negro interviewers, who usually represent the bourgeois element of Negroes, as they are on guard around whites. Usually Negroes know that when this bourgeois Negro walks through the door, he is not doing something that he's initiated himself, but he's involved in something in which the white man is the absolute author of and has sent him to the Negro community for some information. And when they give that Negro some information, usually they give him the information that they want want him to take back to the white man, because that's who he's going to take it back to.
4 more minutes.
Our time is just about up, Minister Malcolm, and perhaps you could summarize and conclude by giving us, in your opinion, or in the opinion of Mr. Elijah Muhammad, what would be the ideal solution to the racial problem in the United States today?
Well, on Thursday, October the 3rd, the New York Tribune, in an editorial, pointed out in Boston, in an article called The Civil Rights Iceberg, they pointed out how Kennedy had realized that beneath the water, the civil rights whole problem was political suicide. Because in his own hometown, the head of the Board of Education, a woman named Mrs. Hicks, was running against the NAACP philosophy, and she swept aside all other opposition. The whole white community supported her in opposition to the NAACP's desire for integrated schools, integrated housing, and otherwise. So I say that to say this, that even the Jewish community, which is supposed to be pro-liberal, went against the NAACP. Whites are against integration in practice, but they're for it in principle. So the only solution is separation. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that this can be brought about simply by letting our people be exposed to the truth about ourselves, about the white man, about our history and our condition in this country. And once we are exposed to the complete truth about things as they actually exist in this country, the masses of black people will choose complete separation from this entire system, political system, economic system, social system, and whatever other aspect or description or adjective you want to attach to it. Let us go back home to our own people, live among our own kind, and solve our own problems ourselves. And if the white man doesn't want us to go back to our own people and live in our own country, then since we can't get along together in peace on this country with white people, let us separate part of this continent, migrate to that separate territory, let the government give us everything we need to establish our own independent economic system and society, and thereby we'll be able to solve our own problems ourselves and prove that we are human beings and a part of the human family and can do for ourselves what other humans have done for themselves. And then we'll be able to stop blaming the white man for what he has done and stop begging the white man to solve our problems. We'll be able to solve our problems ourselves.
Thank you very much. That's it.
Yeah, let's go. Sitting in this place to me seems like paradise, but life is a gamble like the roll of a paradise. Trying to get checks on the side like a pair of Nikes. My black skin is beautiful, you Toms don't wear it right. Protected by my essence and protected by my weapon. My Bible is a rifle, my Quran is a bomb to strike down my enemies. My knife is my psalms. God bless your soul, I got your life in my palm. No love for my enemies. God said you'll send to me knowledge of myself. You ain't my friend, so don't pretend to be. Turning your cheek, the tyrannies are sending me. My God and my gun, I walk with him. You'll begin to see the blessings received for fighting white supremacy. My ancestors in the G, I feel them in my energy. I still got vices like rolling up a dime of weed, but I already quit. I need to breathe when it's time to bleed. By any means you could dream to protect the seas, because my GUN was given to me by my God. My holy bullets leaving you holy. Put it to your grill, you'll be killed if Oman and your Tony pull it, your pale skin. Bullets wet you up like whale skin. This white man a devil, I'ma send you to hell then. I'm working on my aim, no more thinking like a slave. With my God and my gun, I'ma put you in the grave. I rise like the sun with my God and my gun. I walk with them hand in hand like father and son. My God told me stand strong, never taught me to run. My gun to my enemies, one squeeze and you done. I rise like the sun with my God and my gun. I walk with them hand in hand like father and son. My God told me stand strong, never taught me to run. My gun to my enemies, one squeeze and you done. I'm praying as I'm spraying automatics, never laying down to the cracker. I'm attacking all Caucasians, bullets make you drop like salat. All limbs I'm blazing, arm, leg, arm, head. Allah is the greatest, got no love for the sand cracker, the slave trading rapist. If you think I don't know the truth, you sadly mistaken. 600 AD, the Arab invasion of the African continent. Man, the battle station start the African jihad. The time to start chasing, yeah, you really gon' need God. AR's arms, aim and hand to God can reach y'all. Chaos cause changes, freedom fighters could never die. We all God's angels. I rise like the sun with my God and my gun. I walk with him hand in hand like father and son. My God told me stand strong, never taught me to run. My gun to my enemies, one squeeze and you done. I rise like the sun with my God and my gun. I walk with him hand in hand like father and son. My God told me stand strong, never taught me to run. My gun to my enemies, one squeeze and you done.
The reason why I chased them from Uganda was because of the economy of Uganda. Uganda was going to be bankrupt. That is the reason why I chased away the Israelis.
I ain't forget about you. Get 'em. They insured the ships, they paid for the whips, they funded the expeditions, they paid for the trips, and they talk about genocide, they funded our Holocaust, they screaming out Mazel Tov from throwing the Molotov. Hit you in your noggin, now your yarmulke falling off. It's Yahweh or the highway, you'll be dead when the shot is spark. When the shots hit your chest, it'll burn like Bacardi Dark. Return to the Falasha, kill the white Jew imposter, because you lack the matzah to deal with my people proper. Now you gon' have to deal with this bleeping shotgun, the slumlord. The moment you see me, you know you done for. You even see my face on your TV, you better run for it. The evil Hebrew, unequal, you claim to be the chosen people. The wrath of God come to see you. No respect for Israel, you criminal, set the colony. You hate me cause I'm speaking the truth. You try to silence me.
I believe in my God and in my gun. And you say, well, you don't really believe in God if you believe in the gun. I believe in God and my gun. And I pray that he will bless me to shoot straight when it's time to shoot straight. When it's time to shoot straight.
Lit Mobile just sent
Good afternoon. No matter what your point of view may be, there is significant in the growth in Chicago and across the United States, if not around the world, of a movement known as the Black Muslims, a movement which is popularly believed to preach a doctrine of hatred for the white race and the ultimate supremacy of the Negro race. The headquarters of the Muslim movement is here in Chicago in the 5300 block of South Greenwood, and its leader now is known as Elijah Muhammad. He's in residence here. The most active person in the spreading of the Black Muslim movement is Elijah Muhammad's second in command, who calls himself Malcolm X. And Malcolm X is our guest today on City Desk. Across the desk, our panelists this week are NBC newsmen Charles McCune, Floyd Calver, and Len O'Connor. And Mr. X, may I begin by asking you, if you will please, outline for us the platform and policies of the Muslim organization.
Well, the platform that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, our religious leader, stands upon is the platform of complete freedom, justice, and equality for the 20 million black people, or so-called Negroes here in America. And he teaches us that because of the seriousness of the condition that our people now find themselves in, that it's absolutely impossible to solve our problems with means other than religion. And he teaches us that the religion of Islam is the only religion that will instill within our people the incentive to stand on our own feet. And instead of trying to force ourselves upon whites or force ourselves into the white society or blame the white man for our predicament and constantly beg him for what he has, he says that the only way that we can solve our problem is to unite together among ourselves, among our own kind, clean ourselves up, rid ourselves of the evils that we've become addicted to here in this society, and try and solve our problem ourselves.
Then I referred to the popular belief that the Muslims preach a hatred for the white race. You do not subscribe to this, then?
No, I've never heard the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teach or preach hatred for anyone. He preaches hatred against evil, against drunkenness, against dope addiction, against poverty, and against having to beg for the things that a man is supposed to have. But I've never heard him teach us or any of his followers hatred toward any human being.
Do you think that some of his followers possibly then have misinterpreted the word that they've heard and follow a practice of hatred for the white race?
I don't think that any Muslim practices hatred toward anyone. We have businesses around the country that are patronized by whites, and we have many businesses here in Chicago, and our customers are white as well as our own kind. And a white person can go into any of these places of business, and he'll have to admit that he is treated with more respect, and he finds more dignity there than he will find among the so-called Negroes who profess to be teaching love for everyone.
Twice you've referred to the Negroes, the so-called Negroes. You find some fault with this description,
Yes.
I gather.
Mr. Muhammad teaches us that Negro is a term that was applied to us during slavery by the slave master. And right today, it's a term that is used only to point out the descendant of slaves. It's never used for black people, period. Africans can come to this country. They aren't called Negroes. And if they are called Negroes, they resent it. So if Negro meant black, as we've been taught, it would be a term that would be applicable to or pliable to everyone. But he says that it is something that means a slave, or something it means something that has been left out of society, politically, economically, educationally, and otherwise.
You don't think of it as an anthropological term?
Definitely. It's not an anthropological term, it's a slave term. And it was a term that was invented in America and was used by the slave makers, slave traders, and slave masters, and attached to the property or the chattel or merchandise that our people represented in that particular day.
Mr. O'Connor.
What is your real name?
Malcolm X.
Is that your legal name?
As far as I'm concerned, it's my legal name.
Have you been to court to establish that
I didn't have to go to court to be called Murphy or Jones or Smith. Excuse me for answering you this way.
That's
if
all right.
a Chinese person were to say his name was Patrick Murphy, you would look at him like he's insane, because Murphy is an Irish name, a European name, or the name that has a Caucasian or white background. And a yellow person, Chinese is a yellow man, and he has nothing to do or no connection whatsoever with the name Murphy. And if it doesn't look proper for a person who is yellow or Chinese to be walking around named Murphy or Jones or Johnson or Bunch or Powell, I think it would be just as improper for a black person or the so-called Negro in this country, as we're taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, to walk around with these names. And therefore, he teaches us that during slavery, the same slave master who owned us put his last name on us to denote that we were his property. So that when you see a Negro today who's named Johnson, if you go back in his history, you'll find that he was once his grandfather, or one of his forefathers was owned by a white man who was named Johnson. If his name is Bunch, his grandfather was owned by a white man that was named Bunch.
Would you mind telling me what your father's last name was?
My father didn't know his last name. My father got his last name from his grandfather, and his grandfather got it from his grandfather, who got it from the slave master. The real names of our people were destroyed during slavery.
Was there any line, any point in the genealogy of your family when you did have to use the last name, and if so, what was it?
The last name of my forefathers was taken from them when they were brought to America and made slaves. And then the name of the slave master was given, which we refuse. We reject that name today.
You mean you won't even tell me what your father's supposed last name was or gifted last name was?
I never acknowledge it whatsoever.
Let me ask you about the status of Elijah Muhammad. First of all, is he ill?
I spoke to him today. He is in better health than he has been. He's suffering from asthmatic bronchitis.
Is that why he didn't attend your rally on last Tuesday?
The only reason that he didn't attend was his ill condition, and the weather here, especially on that particular day, was of such nature that it would have been almost insane for him to come.
Well, now, did you hold that meeting last Tuesday because it coincided with the general election, the primary election?
I think if you study the history of Mr. Muhammad's work and religious work in this country, we've had our convention on February the 26th every year for, I think, the past 33 years.
Well, now, while you don't care to discuss your former name or the name that the slave master gave to your antecedents, it is a matter of record that Muhammad's last name was Poole, Elijah Poole.
No, that's the name that his slave master gave to his grandfather or great-grandfather, but that's not his name.
Well, his mother and father thought when they called him Elijah Poole that was his name.
They didn't know any better.
Well, if they didn't know any better or not, they thought that was his name.
Yes, sir, but sir...
What I'm trying to find out is when did he cease to be Elijah Poole and get to be Elijah Muhammad?
In 1931, I think it was, in Detroit, he was taught the true history of our people and made aware at that time that he was wearing an English name, and by not being an Englishman, he looked out of place. And his teacher gave him the name that he's wearing today, Muhammad, Elijah Muhammad.
All right, now when did he become what he purports to be in your literature, the son of Allah?
I've never heard the Honorable Elijah Muhammad referred to as the son of Allah.
The prophet of Allah.
I've never heard him referred to as the prophet of Allah.
What do you refer to him
Messenger of Allah.
All right, the messenger of Allah, and I appreciate the correction.
Yes, he says that a prophet is somebody who predicts the future, and he's not predicting the future, whereas a messenger is someone who carries a message that has been given to him by one who authors that message.
Well, now, who gave him the message, and to whom is it supposed to be delivered?
Master W.F. Muhammad, the one who taught him, is the author of the message. He gave it to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, which makes him the messenger. And he's to deliver that message of truth and righteousness to the 20 million American so-called Negroes, which means he's to teach us the truth, which will awaken us, and then show us how to live a life of righteousness, which will automatically qualify us for recognition as human beings by all other righteous human beings here on this earth.
Well, now, one other question. With reference to what Mr. Hurlbut asked you a little bit ago, you took a very moderate position of wanting independence without having any hatred for the whites. Do I understand that correctly?
Hatred is not involved in it whatsoever.
Well, I recall in a recent plane crash, 2 or 3 years ago, or less than that, a charter flight on Air France in which a group of people from Atlanta, Georgia, were, as they say in the business, as they took off from Orly Field. And you were quoted at that time as expressing great gratification that this tragedy had occurred. Do you recall that?
I recall it.
What did you say? Do you remember?
The press misinterpreted it and misrepresented it.
What did you say?
They said that it was made at a Muslim meeting. It wasn't. It was made at a rally of Negroes, Baptist, Methodist, Catholic, and otherwise in Los Angeles, who were rallying to protest the brutal shooting of 7 unarmed Negroes
And what did you
by
say?
heavily armed white policemen in the city of Los Angeles. And because we are a people who have been taught by the Honorable El-Hajj Muhammad to never carry weapons of any kind, but to get on God's side and rely on God to fight our battles for us, at the time that these brothers were shot down so brutally, I pointed out at the funeral of the brother who died that God would step in and take a hand in giving us some form of justice for the brutal killing of our brother. And when the plane crashed in France, I pointed out to the crowd at this rally that this was an act of God showing his wrath or complete resentment over the brutal form of injustice that had been inflicted upon our poor unarmed brothers.
Were you saying
Sir,
that, or do
Billy
you believe
Graham, at that time, Dr. Billy Graham was in a crusade in Chicago, and the press, your papers here in this city, quoted Billy Graham of also saying that plane crash was an act of God. And if you take time to check the newspapers, I think that you'll find that this is correct. But no one thought that Billy Graham was so wrong when he attributed the crash of this plane to his God. But when we say that it come from our God, then we're looked upon as being, outrageous.
I know, but you took the position that this was a matter of satisfaction to you for an injustice done against you, and I think that that's a trifle severe.
We did not think that it was a coincidence that 120 of the whites on this plane came from the state of Georgia, a state that has the worst record in the history of America for the mistreatment of black people in this country.
Worse than Mississippi?
They maybe are a little less Mississippi is a little less hypocritical today than Georgia, but both of them are still practicing the same thing. Now the whites in Georgia bite Negroes with a smile, whereas they used to bite them with a growl. But they're still being bitten, and we don't think that it is any worse to be bitten with a smile than it is to be bitten with a growl.
Mr. Calvert.
While we're on the subject of Mississippi, what is your organization's position of what happened in Mississippi in the past 6 months?
Such as what?
Such as the James Meredith incident and the enrollment of him in the university.
Well, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad wants justice for every one of the 20 million so-called Negroes, and to just take one Negro and stick him in college with the aid of 15,000 troops, and at a cost of $6,000, is a disgrace. It's a waste of taxpayers' money. It's a farce. It's hypocrisy. Because if it's right for one Negro to be forced into that university, then every Negro in the state of Mississippi who is qualified has the same right to go to that university. And if the government is not ready and willing to enforce the right of every Negro in the state of Mississippi, then, in my opinion, sir, it's only hypocrisy to pretend that they are for justice by pushing one Negro in and blowing it up all over the world to make it look like they're solving the problem when millions of black people in that state are still going to segregated schools and getting an inferior education.
Does your organization encourage members to attempt to enter schools that have been known as all white in the past?
The Honorable Elijah Muhammad doesn't discourage us from attending white schools, but he does say that it is better for us to go to our own schools, and after we have a thorough knowledge of ourselves, of our own kind, and racial dignity has been instilled within us, then we can go to anyone's school and we'll still retain our race pride, our racial dignity, and we will be able to avoid the subservient inferiority complex that most Negroes have or that is instilled within most Negroes who receive this sort of integrated education.
Well, you have a private school operating here in Chicago, at least, and possibly elsewhere, and it's been a subject of controversy lately. What is the acceptance of people who come out of your private schools into schools of higher learning?
Yes, we have many students who have graduated from the University of Islam on 54th and Greenwood that are now attending other schools. In fact, just as an example, one of Mr. Muhammad's sons never attended any school in his life but the University of Islam. He later attended DePaul University. He also attended the University of Chicago, and at present he's attending Al-Azhar University in Cairo, one of the oldest Muslim schools in the world. And his daughter-in-law also, who went to school here, is attending the University of Cairo. And then we have other students who have graduated that are attending other colleges and universities in this country. And in our school, we never have any delinquency problems. We never have any dropouts. We never have any disrespect for authority or disrespect for parents. We don't have any kind of juvenile delinquency. All of the things that the regular school system is complaining about, the critics and the most severe critics of Mr. Muhammad has to admit that we aren't plagued with those same problems in our own school.
I have listened to your leader, at least on one occasion in convention here. It was 2 years ago, and at that time he advocated the separate state proposition of giving the what you call the so-called American Negro a separate state in which to live, to make their own way. Would you explain that philosophy, please? And have you had any support for it from anybody in official ranks?
Your first question first. To my understanding, what Mr. Muhammad has said is that he wants freedom, justice, and equality for the black people here in America, which you agree they don't have. If they did, you wouldn't have a race problem. And he says, if America cannot bring about freedom, justice, and equality for our people in this country, then America should allow us to leave. If we can't get along together, we should be allowed to depart and go someplace where we can set up housekeeping for ourselves. Then he says, if America doesn't want us to go back home among our own people, and at the same time they want to keep us here, since we can't stay here and get along together in peace, he says what America should do is separate part of the country and give us a section where we can live, and give us everything we need to get our particular section functioning independently, support us for 25 years until we are able to function independently in a society of our own, and in this way the problem will be solved.
Mr. McCune.
You say there's no juvenile delinquency. What is the discipline that you
number one, excuse me,
practice?
Sir. One of the first things that Mr. Muhammad teaches is you have to set an example if you want others to do right. And he teaches the grown-up Muslims to live a highly disciplined and a highly moral life of high morals. And by the parents displaying the highest of morals in front of the children at all times, automatically this sets a pattern or an example for the children. And in our schools, our children, the emphasis is placed upon the recognition of authority. And by the children recognizing authority and respecting authority, it's easy for anyone who is in authority to teach the child and discipline the child and make the child aware of the importance of living a life in accord with the law even after he grows up.
How did you happen to join the Muslim movement?
I was in prison. I was a very wayward, criminal, backward, illiterate, uneducated, and whatever other negative characteristics you can think of type of person until I heard the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And because of the impact that it had upon me in giving me a desire to reform myself and rehabilitate myself for the first time in my life, and also being able to see the effect that it had upon others, this is what made me accept it. And plus, prior to hearing what he teaches, I had no interest whatsoever in anything serious or any kind of educational pursuits. And I noticed that after being exposed to the religious teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, immediately it instilled within me such a high degree of racial pride and racial dignity that I wanted to be somebody. And I realized that I couldn't be anybody by begging the white man for what he had, but that I had to get out here and try and do something for myself or make something out of myself.
What has been the growth of the Muslim movement? There are conflicting reports as to how many Muslims there are in the United States. Can you tell us?
Well, most critics say that the dissatisfied follow Muhammad, that the unemployed and the oppressed follow Muhammad. And I think you'll agree, the sociologists, the economists, and other experts say that the masses of black people are dissatisfied, unemployed, oppressed, and fed up, so that he actually gets his support at the mass level. But now you have other Negroes at the class level who pretend not to go for him, because usually their job has been given to them by the white man. They have positions to which they have been appointed, and they think that the only way that they can protect their job is by pretending in front of the white man that they don't go for Mr. Muhammad either. But you find that he gets
how many Muslims do you say there are in numbers?
I couldn't say. I've never heard him say, and he's the only one who would know.
500,000?
I couldn't say. I think that anyone who does say is not in a position to know, and anyone who knows wouldn't say.
What do you think that the Urban League and the NAACP have accomplished for your people? What's your attitude toward them?
Well, in their own way, they have been doing their best to bring about freedom, justice, and equality and human dignity for the black people in this country. But today you have such an intense degree of dissatisfaction and impatience existing among our people at the mass level that it is almost impossible to come to them with a program that's going to take another 100 years to solve their problem, and they still be satisfied to wait. So that they have, the Urban League and the NAACP has done a good job within their understanding. But today it takes more immediate solutions. And the solution that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has is immediate. It's more practical.
You think they're not moving fast enough?
Well, they're moving as fast as they can. But that's not fast enough for the masses of black people. If a person is sitting on a warm stove and you get ready to let him up, no matter how slow you are, he has patience because it's only warm. But the masses of black people who are sitting on a hot stove, they're impatient. And no matter how fast you say progress is being made toward letting them up, that progress is not fast enough for them.
Well, the NAACP and the Urban League have both been critical of the Muslims.
The NAACP and Urban League have been maneuvered into criticizing us against their own will. Usually the divide and conquer tactics have always been used by the oppressor to keep the oppressed oppressed. And the NAACP has been used against the Muslims. Efforts have been made to use us against them, but the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said he'll work with the NAACP, the Urban League, and any other Negro organization that wants to uplift the black man as long as it doesn't conflict with our religious principles.
Well, I remember once when Elijah was quoted as having said that the Urban League and the NAACP sold out to the white man. Has he ever made that statement
to my knowledge, I don't think that he has said that they sold out to the white man. I've heard him say that.
Is that his feeling?
The NAACP has been in existence for 54 years. And they elect a new national president every year, and they have never elected a black man to sit in that capacity. Arthur Spingarn has been president of the NAACP for 24 years. And so in this sense, it means that either they're practicing the same discrimination that they accuse the white man of practicing, they're practicing it themselves, or else they're not qualifying other Negroes in that organization for positions of leadership. This is our only criticism.
You personally feel that they have sold out to the white man? You personally feel that those organizations have sold out to the white man?
I don't think that they would knowingly allow themselves to be used or misused against their own people. So if they are failing to do the job that our people expect of them, probably it's just through lack of understanding. But today their understanding is increasing, and you'll find that they're developing a better ability to work with all different factions for the betterment of our people.
Malcolm, how do you yourself feel about the white man?
I believe that the white man has done a great injustice to the black man in this country by having kidnapped our people and brought us here and down to the level that we're on today. And today, instead of approaching the factors that their original mistake has created, instead of approaching these factors objectively and realistically, the greatest sin that they're doing now is trying to pretend that they never committed a crime, that they never did any wrong. And when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad points out the injustices that our people are suffering, they make that sin worse by accusing him of teaching hate, or by accusing him of black supremacy, or by accusing him of advocating violence, simply because he is pointing out the real factors in the problem.
We have a little time left. You don't have to hurry so much, Malcolm. You were born in Omaha, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And your family left Omaha when you were, what, 1 year old?
I imagine about a year old.
And why did they leave Omaha?
Well, to my understanding, the Ku Klux Klan burned down one of their homes in Omaha.
This made your family feel very unhappy, I'm sure.
Well, insecure, if not unhappy.
So you must have a somewhat prejudiced point of view, a personally prejudiced point of view. In other words, you cannot look at this in a broad academic sort of way, really, can you?
I think that's incorrect, because despite the fact that happened in Omaha, and then when we moved to Lansing, Michigan, our home was burned down again. In fact, my father was killed by the Ku Klux Klan. And despite all of that, no one was more thoroughly integrated with whites than I. No one has lived more so in the society of whites than I. And it was only until I became a Muslim that I ceased living in the society of whites.
You say you were thoroughly integrated with the whites, Malcolm.
Yes.
Do you have white people in your family background?
Definitely. Most Negroes in this country have whites in their family background.
How are you going to differentiate between the white blood that's in you and the Negro blood that's in you? And you don't mind my using the term Negro because you use this yourself.
I use it interchangeably.
I know you do. Why do you do that?
Well, I use it if it fits the purpose to use it, but I use it against my will.
Do you? But you used it voluntarily in describing the incident in Los Angeles.
Still, I use it against my will.
I guess the teachings weren't thoroughly inculcated.
No, but when I say to you that the cops in Los Angeles shot down 7 unarmed Negroes, every Negro in the audience knows what I'm talking about. But when I say that they shot 7 Muslims, then a lot of the Negroes don't
I
realize that
suppose you
you're
said
still talking
7
about
colored
Negroes.
people because you say you used the term colored people. If you said...
I don't think I
shot
used the
7
word colored on this program.
Yes, you did. You did when you
Not
started
colored.
out. I think so. Black people, I'm sorry. You did
Black.
say black.
Well, we can use black, and that fits everybody.
Okay.
But, sir, the black...
Now, let me get back to another point that you made. You said that you go back home. Now, what do you mean by back home?
I've only heard the Honorable El-Hajj Muhammad say, back among our own people. From
You
whence
said back home. You don't mind my saying
Right,
that.
back home. But by that he
Do
means...
you mean back into the roots of Islam, or do you mean back to Africa?
Back home. And by
Africa.
back home, he means back into our original civilization. And if you study history, the Islamic culture existed in West Africa,
But your
Central
family
Africa.
didn't come from an Islamic background originally, did it? I mean, you came from the proud tribes of Africa, which is
I think
certainly
you'll
have a
find,
pride-
sir, that one of
proud
the
background.
that Islam, the Islamic culture,
I agree, there is
existed
a lot of-
widely in Africa, Central Africa,
I agree,
West Africa.
I agree. I've met many people in there. Mr. O'Connor.
With regard to that tragedy out there in Los Angeles, I myself refer to it when it happened as the tragic police action, so I am not totally biased.
Thank you, sir.
Coming from Muhammad Speaks, which is the publication of your cult or your religion, Elijah Muhammad referred to the policemen out there, the white policemen, as devils. He said, "There is no justice here for us black people. There is no future for us nor our children in civilized America." Doesn't that imply that you're going to get out, or that's his wish that you get out?
If he referred to those policemen out there as devils, who were heavily armed and knew that the Negroes whom they were shooting down in cold blood were not heavily armed, I don't think that those policemen themselves would deny that they're devils, nor would any Negro who witnessed such a deed deny that they are devils.
Well, about the other part of it, there's no justice here for us black people. There is no future for us nor our children in civilized America. And I didn't make that up. He said it in his own
And he's correct
publication.
in what he says, sir.
Well, what does it mean? Does it mean you're going to get out, or
It
what?
means the same thing that Attorney General Robert Kennedy means when he says that the #1 domestic problem in America is the race problem, that it is almost impossible to solve it. It's almost impossible to give justice to Negroes.
One brief thing further. I read also in Muhammad Speaks the quotation that Elijah Muhammad is the only person on earth who was on personal speaking terms with God. Do you believe that?
Definitely.
You do?
We're
Definitely.
going to have to leave it at that. And Malcolm, I'm sure he's done a good job in rehabilitating you. It was a pleasure to have you on City Desk.
I'm in Chicago for the next 3 weeks at the local mosque at 54th and Greenwood for a special lecture series.
One, two, three, four.
Overcame the pain and all the hardships. We focus on our game and kept the targets. They try to take our brain and keep our raw gifts, but we still remaining, now we bullshit. Flawless, you know how I go. Black power looking good and we let it show. We stack by the hour, yeah, and we let it grow. These crackers not doing nothing, we let them know. Nothing you can do gon' change us. We always gon' be around, we gon' bang what. We never gon' simmer down, you can't tame us. No religion, no criticism can chain us. Black is all you hear when I'm talking. I'm reppin' for the light to the dark skin. RBG steppin' when I walk in. Crackers early mad cause I'm flossing. Black is all you see around me. I put my hands in these hearts in the streets, yeah, they lean on me.
Rockin' with the same script, hopping off the same shit. Ever since they dropped me off the slave ship.
Black is all you see around me. I put my hands in these hearts in these streets, yeah, they lean on me.
Rockin' with the same script, hopping off the same shit. Ever since they dropped me off the slave ship.
Watch the step out, a black king. My fist in the air while I'm rapping. RBG, where you see my fashion. My fame is all here, no lacking. You see the vision, it's all clear. Black power living here with no fear. We did the prisons, we dropped the tears. Now we're focused on his eyepiece. RBG, yeah, on the pop out. A cracker go to sleep, that's a knockout. What you wanna eat, go and rock out. Black everything, this a lockout. The camera's on now, go and take a flick. The pressure been on, can't take a hit. Ever since they dropped me off the slave ship, I've been on the same shit. Black is all you see around me. I put my hands in these hearts in the streets, yeah, they lean on me.
Rocking with the same script, hopping off the same shit. Ever since they dropped me off the slave ship.
Black is all you see around me. I put my hands in these hearts in these streets, yeah, they lean on me.
Rocking with the same script, hopping off the same shit. Ever since they dropped me off the slave ship.
You think you be going like this? Hey, that's it. Come on, man. Come on, Mika.
You gotta show them how to swag it.
Come on, Mika. Why you put me out the shower? It's in your head. It's always music playing. Doom, 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 doom. Doom, doom, doom. Doom, doom, doom. The pain and all the hardships. We focus on our game and kept the targets. They try to take our brain and keep our raw gifts, but we still remaining, now we bullshit.
Malcolm, on your trip abroad, you said you sensed a feeling of great brotherhood, and that conceivably you would be working toward integration in this country now. At least this is what you're reported to have said. Have you any comment on it?
I don't think that I ever mentioned anything about working toward integration. If I recall, I pointed out that while I was at Mecca making the pilgrimage, I spoke about the brotherhood that existed at all levels and among all people who were there on that Hajj, who had accepted the religion of Islam. And I pointed out that for what it had done, what the religion of Islam had done for those people over there, despite their complexion differences, that it would probably do America well to study the religion of Islam, and perhaps it could drive some of the racism from this society as it has driven racism from the Muslim society.
Drive is aiming for this goal?
Well, I can't say that the current integration drive is aiming for that goal, because it hasn't realized the goal in any state. They haven't even got integration right here in New York City. You have worse integration problems in the North than they have in the South. So if it doesn't work if you can't bring about integration in New York City, as international, cosmopolitan, up-to-date as it's supposed to be, you will never get integration anywhere else in the country.
Malcolm, have your experiences with white-skinned Muslims in Africa and the Middle East made you feel that relations between Negroes and whites who are not Muslims is any more possible?
When I was on the pilgrimage, I had close contact with Muslims whose skin would in America be classified as white, and with Muslims who themselves would be classified as white in America. But these particular Muslims didn't call themselves white. They looked upon themselves as human beings, as part of the human family, and therefore they looked upon all other segments of the human family as part of that same family. Now, they had a different look or a different air or a different attitude than that which is reflected in the attitude of the man in America who calls himself white. So I said that if Islam had done that for them, perhaps if the white man in America would study Islam, perhaps it could do the same thing for him.
I think what a lot of people are interested in, Malcolm, is whether this experience has made you feel that your feelings have changed, that the animosity you have expressed in the past toward all whites.
There's one thing that I want to make clear. No matter how much respect, no matter how much recognition whites show toward me, as far as I'm concerned, as long as that same respect and recognition is not shown toward every one of our people in this country, it doesn't exist for me.
Malcolm, just are you prepared to go into the United Nations at this point and ask that charges be brought against the United States for its treatment of American Negroes?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Please. I think you're right in my chair. The audience will have to be quiet. Yes, as I pointed out when I was during my traveling, that nations African nations and Asian nations and Latin American nations look very hypocritical when they stand up in the United Nations condemning the racist practices of South Africa and that which is practiced by Portugal and Angola, and saying nothing in the UN about the racist practices that are manifest every day against Negroes in this society. Even in South Africa, those Africans aren't faced with bayonets and aren't faced with police dogs. And when I was in Beirut, I saw a picture on the front page of a Negro being beaten in Tennessee, on the front page of the paper in Beirut. When I got to Cairo, I saw the same picture of a Negro being beaten in Tennessee. When I got to Lagos, I saw the same picture. So were these African nations, knowing the brutality that is inflicted upon black people in this country, simply because those black people are trying to get what the Supreme Court said they were supposed to have 10 years ago, I would be not a man. If I was in a position to bring it in front of the United Nations and didn't do so, I wouldn't be a man.
Malcolm, do you intend to lead the charge in the United Nations?
Well, I find that to say you're going to lead something creates a lot of hostility, division, jealousy, and envy. I hope to work with any group of leaders or any group of organizations to do whatever is necessary to see that this problem is brought before the United Nations.
Have you had any commitment from any nations in Africa to support your move?
I would rather not say at this time. But one thing I found in my travels, all of them look upon us as their long-lost brother.
You realize the implication is that you have had such commitments when you say...
This is your interpretation of what I said. One thing that I found in all of my travels was that all of the Africans, not only the Africans, but the Asians and the Muslims, look upon us as their long-lost brothers. And America had actually tricked many of them into a hands-off policy by giving them the impression that she was honestly trying to do something to solve the problem. My argument over there was designed to prove that it is impossible for the United States government to solve the race problem. It's impossible for a government which has 16 senatorial committees, over which 10 are chairmaned by Southern segregationists, and 20 congressional committees, over which 12 are chairmaned by Southern segregationists. This is a segregationist, racist government that's controlled by people from the South. They can't solve the race problem.
Do you intend to take any part in the political campaign this fall?
We intend to take part in everything that will get results at eliminating the injustices that our people are confronted with in this country. Politically, economically, anything.
Will you support candidates of either of the two parties?
We'd rather not say at this time.
Are you prepared to work with some of the leaders of the other civil rights organizations?
Certainly. We will work with any groups, organizations, or leaders in any way, as long as it's genuinely designed to get results.
And any action on the civil rights bill, how will this affect the direction of your movement?
Any action on the civil rights bill? Well, I'm surprised that all of these civil rights groups combined haven't converged on Washington long before now. I'm surprised. If they took all the time and the expense of going down last year, singing their songs and things of that sort, before they even started the filibuster, I'm surprised that they have permitted the filibuster to go on as long as it has and have not taken any concrete actions to bring it to a halt.
Would you join another march to Washington?
Oh, yes.
You didn't last year, did you?
I didn't last year because I was a part of the black Muslim movement, which has as its policy a hands-off attitude in becoming involved in any phase of the struggle of the so-called Negro in this country for what he feels are his rights. And my disassociation from that particular religious group gives me complete freedom to involve myself in anything that I honestly and sincerely feel is designed to get results.
How would you say this pilgrimage to Mecca has altered the course of your relations with the movement of Elijah Muhammad?
Well, I don't know. I'm not here to discuss the movement of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in any way. I would say this, that the pilgrimage at Mecca is an anthropologist, would be an anthropologist's paradise, because it's the only event and the only spot on earth that has every specimen of humanity in the same place at the same time, practicing brotherhood and in harmony. It's the only place where I've ever seen brotherhood practiced by people of all races, of everything.
Has this been a religious experience?
Definitely. I went because of my religious beliefs, and I think that I have a better understanding of my religion. I was a state guest while I was there for 12 days of Prince Faisal, who was the present leader of the government. He made everything available to me to give me every opportunity to get a better understanding of the religion of Islam. When I first got there, I was in a compound because it wasn't known that I was there. And once they found out I was there, they put me in a suite at the Jeddah Palace Hotel, gave me a car with a chauffeur and a mutawif who could speak Arabic and take me wherever I wanted. I could go back and forth between Mecca and Jeddah every night if it was my desire. I have never been given more hospitality and treated with more brotherhood than I was treated in Arabia by the Muslims there.
Does your new beard have any religious significance?
No, not particularly, but I do think that you find black people in America, as they strive to throw off the shackles of mental colonialism, will also probably reflect an effort to throw off the shackles of cultural colonialism, and they may begin to reflect desires of their own with standards of their own.
Malcolm, what specific concrete move would you make that other civil rights leaders have not made to ensure passage of this civil rights bill?
Well, I frankly believe, sir, that it's not within the heart or conscience or ability. They're rope, they're becoming frustrated, they're becoming disillusioned, they're becoming disenchanted, and it's up to the government to do something serious. It's up to the government to do something about the condition. Please don't do that applauding.
You gonna keep going?
Good. I have a little bit more. Yeah, okay. Malcolm, a more controversial remarks was a call for black people to get rifles and form rifle clubs sometime back. Do you still favor that for self-defense?
I don't see why that should be controversial. I think that if white people found themselves the victim of the same kind of brutality that black people in this country face, and they saw that the government was either unwilling or unable to protect them, that the intelligence on the part of the whites would make them get some rifles and shotguns and protect themselves. Now, Negroes are developing some kind of intellectual maturity too, and they can see that having waited upon the government to protect them has been a wait that has been in vain. So any of them who live in areas where the government is not able to do its job, then we do have to get together and do a job of protecting ourselves.
Could I ask you another question that may seem a little silly, but it's the question of the names. I think a lot of people are confused by the new Arabic name, El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz.
I've always had the name on my passport, Malik El-Shabazz, only I only used it in the Muslim world. Well, Hajj is a title that is given to any Muslim who makes the pilgrimage to Mecca during the official Hajj season.
Well, will you now use Shabazz and drop X?
I'll probably continue to use Malcolm X and I'll probably use it as long as the situation that produced it exists.
You don't feel that Shabazz takes the place of X?
My going to Mecca and going into the Muslim world, into the African world, and being recognized and accepted as a Muslim and as a brother may solve the problem for me personally, but I personally feel that my personal problem is never solved as long as the problem is not solved for all of our people in this country. So I remain Malcolm X as long as there is a need to protest and struggle and fight against the injustices that our people are involved in this country.
When Cassius Clay was in Accra, he was quoted as saying some things that were not so friendly. Could you have anything to say about that?
I don't know anything about what he said. I'm always reluctant to believe what I read in the newspaper that one black man supposedly said about another black man. Well, and if I have anything at all to say about Cassius, I'll say it to him.
Well, it's just that he said people weren't listening to you anymore. Do you think that's true?
As I said, if I have anything to say about him, I'll say it to him. He's a person who listens. He talks and he listens.
Do you still consider him a friend?
Yes, I consider all of our people my friend, and usually those who act unfriendly are only reflecting the poison that someone else has put in them.
Just one other one, and that's, what are you going to do about the traffic ticket?
The traffic ticket?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to appear in court on it.
When?
I don't know. I had left, the lawyer was supposed to have appeared in court for me on the 19th of May, and from what I understand, he didn't, and it created a lot of controversy. I never was speeding. It was a segregationist police officer or an integrationist, I don't know which one. And he knew who I was. He recognized who I was and stopped me on that pretext. And I just sat there. I didn't even talk to him. I just gave him my license and sat there because I figured that he might have been up to something else, you know.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
If you accept an image of God from another people, and that image looks like the other people and not like you, then you will forever be the spiritual prisoner of that other people. Dr. John Henry Clark, Death to the Negro.
They be like, yo, why you the pastor? Like, what's church in the field? Like, we black power, we trying to get out the church. Like, slow your ass down and listen, grown folks talk. I'm the pastor. I used to sit and listen, got me scared to think I'm sinning. That's when the devil was in the ground, didn't know the true and living. With cool precision, preacher's voice pushed me to a limit. Never knew a Kemet and missing books of Bible edits. Who get the credit? Message to the black man read it. So Pastor Green's the author, this black man's message said it. Let the mountains tell it, we don't tell it on the mountain. My ancestors had a carving fetish. These crackers and they gay paintings of molested babies and angel feathers is more than suggestive. Popes and Vatican weapons, whole motion promotion to download guards is oppressive. Message a bomb that distorts and confuses the senses. Welcome to the black church and what it's meant to be. The pastor reaches the people, that's what it meant to me. Grandma heard me break it down. She said I need to preach, introducing Pastor Green, no compromising, cracker free. Welcome to the black church and what it's meant to be. The pastor reaches the people, that's what it meant to me. Grandma heard me break it down. She said I need to preach, introducing Pastor Green, no compromising, cracker free. Pastors and teachers working in the church's service. D to the evolution of the Negro preacher in this sermon. No cracker worship or making nuns out of our daughters. We honoring our ancestors through rituals and altars. I walk this world and live it though cautious in my desire. Reaching higher as the lies in my mind expire. Preaching fire from the ships protected by Amaya Oshun's sister while we survive the ride to the islands. Offer her fruit, fish and silver, a choice to gold and diamonds. Accepting guardian spirits, learn how to call and find them. So when I take you to church, remember and remind them. America where I live, but Africa's where you find him. Welcome to the black church and what it's meant to be. The past that reaches the people, that's what it meant to me. Grandma heard me break it down. She said I need to preach, introducing Pastor Green, no compromising, cracker free. Welcome to the black church and what it's meant to be. The past that reaches the people, that's what it meant to me. Grandma heard me break it down. She said I need to preach, introducing Pastor Green, no compromising, cracker free. Nobody questioned God's color till cracker defined race skin. Jealous cause the carbon in mine keep me blacker than space wind. From the greatest to the lowest, I notice no more waiting. Crackers is all devil, coons is the footrest of Satan. D-do always kill it cause D-do make you feel it. Thorough in the spirit with them bars off the skillet. I ain't gotta tell nobody I'm African, I already did it. Sometimes I'm rhyming alkaline refined, but this is all acidic. Dumb and dumber done did it, cracker grave dig it. I'm the pastor cause of how my words engage spirits. Church and the fan is my shield to you for the wicked. Black power versus always dismissing your crucifixion. Welcome to the black church and what it's meant to be. The pastor reaches the people, that's what it meant to me. Grandma heard me break it down. She said I need to preach, introducing Pastor Green, no compromising, cracker free.
These guys are just showing me how much effort.
Hard as they want. Do you feel that your message, apparent message of love that you brought back from Islam is the real reason they're after you, because you're not hating as hard as they want you to?
Well, I never did hate anybody hard, but I do know that when I wrote that letter saying that there were white people in Mecca, it shook up a lot of Muslims, because most of the Muslims who follow Mr. Muhammad absolutely believed that it was impossible, physically impossible, I should say divinely impossible, for a white person to go to Mecca. And my trip there shattered that image, or that misconcept.
Anyone call you directly, Malcolm?
I've been receiving calls ever since I left the Black Muslim movement.
And what sort of calls, Malcolm? They're disenchanted and deal with the fact that these men who were your brothers are making threats against your life?
No, because actually it's not their fault. Most of them, now Joseph and the officials, they have a knowledge of what it's all about. But the rank and file Muslim brother does not know what it's all about. They are, out of religious sincerity, they think that they are doing the will of Allah by protecting a man who I myself taught them was divine. So I don't in any way fault them. But those who are over them and give the orders, and actually the ultimate order comes from El-Hajj Muhammad himself. As long as I represented the Black Muslim movement as an example of morality, unity, and militancy, as long as I could do that, I represented it. It was when I realized that it could not be represented as that I came on and started working among the non-Muslim Negroes, as I announced in January, and I had no intention, or rather March, and I had no intention of ever even speaking on this. Had they left me alone, you still wouldn't know what really took place.
Why are they threatening your life?
Well, primarily because they're afraid that I will tell the real reason that that I'm out of the Black Muslim movement, which I never told. I kept to myself. But the real reason is that El-Hajj Muhammad, the head of the movement, is the father of 8 children by 6 different teenage girls, 6 different teenage girls who were his private personal secretary. The one who first made me aware of this was Wallace Muhammad, Mr. Muhammad's son. And I had stated in a newspaper article about an effort to take my life back in January, and at that time the Muslims denied it. In fact, they tried to make it appear to my brother that I was insane. But on a program in Chicago called Hotline, that's moderated by Wesley South, John Ali, the national secretary, admitted, I think it was Wednesday or Thursday, one of these days last week, that they absolutely were going to kill me.
What steps will you take to protect yourself from this threat?
I take no steps. I have a rifle. If anybody comes to my house without a good reason, I intend to try and use it, and that's all.
Right now?
No, I don't worry. I tell you, I'm a man who believed that I died 20 years ago, and I live like a man who is dead already. I have no fear whatsoever of anybody or anything.
You got your hemorrhoids?
Yeah.
They wanna murder me. They wanna murder me.
Trying to kill us.
Going down like that. They wanna murder me. They wanna murder me. But I ain't going out like that. They wanna murder me. They wanna murder me. But it ain't going down like that. They wanna murder me. They wanna murder me. But I ain't going out like that.
They wanna murder me. They wanna murder me. They wanna turn my white tee to color burgundy. They wanna bury me. They wanna turn me to worm food. Burn me up and throw me in the urn. I ain't a darn fool. I see the signs clear, but I ain't shook. If you want me, come and get me, cause I'm right here. And I ain't shutting up until we shut they whole ish down. Until they shut me up. The last time I got bagged, the bitch me up. But they ain't start acting tough until they cuffed me up. A bunch of overgrown Boy Scouts. But it's us against them till they let every one of my boys out. Until then the saga continues. I don't like the way it's going down and I ain't about the potential. So you if I ever offend you. Cause if you ain't poor and black then you don't know what I've been through.
Yeah, they wanna murder me. They wanna murder me.
Trying to kill us.
Going down like that. They wanna murder me. They wanna murder me. But I ain't going out like that. They wanna murder me. They wanna murder me. But it ain't going down like that. They wanna murder me. They wanna murder me. But I ain't going out like that.
They wanna murder me. They wanna murder me. They wanna turn my white tee to color burgundy. They wanna bury me. They wanna turn me to worm food. Burn me up and throw me in the urn. I ain't a darn fool. I see the signs clear, but I ain't shook. If you want me, come and get me, cause I'm right here. And I ain't shutting up until we shut they whole ish down. Until they shut me up. The last time I got bagged, the bitch me up. But they ain't start acting tough until they cuffed me up. A bunch of overgrown Boy Scouts. But it's us against them till they let every one of my boys out. Until then the saga continues. I don't like the way it's going down and I ain't about the potential. So you if I ever offend you. Cause if you ain't poor and black then you don't know what I've been through.
They wanna murder me, they wanna murder me, but it ain't going down like that. They wanna murder me, they wanna murder me, but I ain't going out like that. They wanna murder me, they wanna murder me, but it ain't going down like that. They wanna murder me, they wanna murder me, but I ain't going out like
to kill or be killed, homicide on my mind. Mama ain't trying to kill me, but how I'm gonna die? I got a little girl, plus got work to finish. Still in on our line of work, we put our lives on the line. Every day, all the time, every day on the grind, and every day get slain on the grind, it's a damn shame. Still I stay on the grind, cause like you had to do, I gotta provide for me and my mom. Pop died from high blood pressure, I'm amped up, pulling that thing out the dresser. I'm out to kill a man, my mind spinning like a ceiling fan. You always said I was special, but I guess it was inevitable, no exception. Maybe it was destined, as I sit here cleaning this weapon, thinking about life and death. This is self-preservation, not just self-defense. They wanna murder me.
They wanna murder me, they wanna murder me, but it ain't going down like that. They wanna murder me, they wanna murder me, but I ain't going out like that. They wanna murder me, they wanna murder me, but it ain't going down like that. They wanna murder me, they wanna murder me, but I ain't going out like that.
They wanna murder me, they wanna murder me. Either that or lock me up for eternity. You heard me? They wanna murder me, dawg. Matter of fact, if you black, they wanna murder us all. Exterminate us systematically. If they ain't killing us quick, well then they feeding us itch to kill us gradually. It's a tragedy, we under attack. From the Rima to Katrina, the Patriot Act.
6 million ways to die. Choose one. They say you live by the gun, die by the gun, but you ain't gotta live by it to die by it. Cops killed Amadou Diallo, all he had was a wallet. Cops be wildin'. Shot my man Sweepy for no reason. Timothy Stansbury, murdered for no reason. It's open season, like we ducks or something. Every time cops kill one of us, I feel like Buck or something. Hey,
this ain't your everyday rap,
and we ain't just some dry snitching dumb cats
hustling backwards.
In fact, we the opposite.
We don't comply with the law, we say the hell with they law.
What's your politics?
I'm no politician. I'm not even a student of politics. I'm not a Republican nor a Democrat, and got sense enough to know it.
Yeah.
Hey, so.
Yeah. Hey, your likes. Yeah, I hear cats talking about change. Yeah, I hear y'all talking.
Barack Obama ain't no savior, neither was Jesse Jackson, no. Neither was Malcolm or Martin, no. Neither is Al Sharpton, no, no. David Dinkins wasn't no savior, neither was any mayor, no. If they was black, I don't even care. We gotta save ourselves, we gotta save ourselves.
I'm like a Broadway play. The world is a stage, you got a part to play, play it. You got something to say, say it. All that talk about that savior shit, save it. We gotta do what we gotta do. Nothing is impossible, not one man. It's gonna take a lot of you, a lot of us. Yeah, I'm talking about the whole populace. The day we come together, ain't no stopping us.
Respect you for Rod and Garvey and Noble Drew Ali and all the fallen black leaders that spark me on for the cause. God, as long as my heart beats, my every thought deep. I'm plotting and planning until we all free. Teaching what was taught to me is each one teach one, cause that's the way it ought to be. The future's bright, that ain't hard to see. I'm about to make a t-shirt that say revolution starts with me. Enough respect.
I'm no politician. I'm not even a student of politics. I'm not a Republican nor a Democrat and got sense enough to know it.
Yeah.
Hey, so.
Yeah. Hey, your likes. Yeah, I hear cats talking about change. Yeah, I hear y'all talking.
Barack Obama ain't no savior, neither was Jesse Jackson, no. Neither was Malcolm or Martin, no. Neither is Al Sharpton, no, no. David Dinkins wasn't no savior, neither was any mayor, no. If they was black, I don't even care. We gotta save ourselves, we gotta save ourselves.
I'm like a Broadway play. The world is a stage, you got a part to play, play it. You got something to say, say it. All that talk about that savior shit, save it. We gotta do what we gotta do. Nothing is impossible, not one man. It's gonna take a lot of you, a lot of us. Yeah, I'm talking about the whole populace. The day we come together, ain't no stopping us.
Respect you for Rod and Garvey and Noble Drew Ali and all the fallen black leaders that spark me on for the cause. God, as long as my heart beats, my every thought deep. I'm plotting and planning until we all free. Teaching what was taught to me is each one teach one, cause that's the way it ought to be. The future's bright, that ain't hard to see. I'm about to make a t-shirt that say revolution starts with me. Enough respect.
Barack Obama ain't no savior, neither was Jesse Jackson, no. Neither was Malcolm or Martin, no. Neither is Al Sharpton, no, no. David Dinkins wasn't no savior, neither was any mayor, no. If they was black, I don't even care. We gotta save ourselves, we gotta save ourselves.
I'm waiting for Jesus, I'm waiting for the black Messiah. They say a sucker's born every second. You know a pacifier, they wanna pacify it. They want you waiting for salvation, praying and hoping and wishing till your ass expire. In the casket lying on your back, your whole family crying. He with God now, say goodbye now. Meanwhile, the powers that be is having powwows about how to maintain their power while the planet dying.
Black and brown power, we got that back and down power. We can take this, we ain't gotta take this, cause we the majority. So fuck the authorities put in place to protect the minorities from the bum rush. It's us against a system that's unjust and lopsided. Every 5 minutes is cop sirens, but never the ambulance. Man, waiting for them, you don't stand a chance, fam. You better catch a cab.
Barack Obama ain't no savior, neither was Jesse Jackson, no. Neither was Malcolm or Martin, no. Neither is Al Sharpton, no, no. David Dinkins wasn't no savior, neither was any mayor, no. If they was black, I don't even care.
Man, I don't even care, dog.
We gotta save ourselves, we gotta save ourselves.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about? Basically, all we saying is stop putting people on pedestals, man, regardless of who they are. Saying ain't no saviors out here, dog. Saying we all gotta put in work, we all gotta play our part. As far as these politicians, we can't depend on these politicians, because the system ain't designed for us. It ain't designed for change. It's designed for the same thing over and over. If you don't understand that,